In this crazy world, it's so hard to unwind. So I'm taking time just for me. Gonna find my peace, let my soul be free. In the quiet moments, that's where I'll find a little room to breathe and leave it all behind. Give me room to breathe, I need some time to heal my heart, to clear my mind. Gonna love myself, yeah, I believe in the power of me. Just give me room to breathe.
Great new day to all my self-care friends and family. Welcome back to another Room to Breathe podcast. I am your host, Life Coach 614, and I am so happy that you've made space to be here with us today. Now, before we jump into today's episode, I just need you all to do me a quick favor. If you're feeling the vibe, I want you to go ahead and show us some love. Tap that screen, like, comment. Most importantly, I need you to share this out with someone who could use a little healing energy today. And if this is your first time here or you haven't done so already, go ahead and hit that follow button. Subscribe to our channel so that way you're always tapped in when a new episode drops. I also wish to personally invite each and every one of you to visit our website at theselfcareclub.org, where you will find everything from affirmative apparel to motivational merch, as well as a ton of free resources to help nourish your growth and remind you that you are supported every step of the way. Just know that you don't have to do this alone. We are healing in community, growing one breath, one moment, one day at a time. So today, I encourage you to give yourself permission to pause, to reflect, to make space for peace, for growth, but most importantly for you. And remember, if anything in today's conversation hits home, be sure to drop a green heart in the chat. That is our community's way of saying I am healing, I am growing, and I am showing up for me. Now, let's get ready to breathe, reflect, and grow together. Welcome in, everybody. We got Roxy and Melody. Let's see, Roxy's on YouTube. We got Melody joining us from Facebook. We got Queen Unique Creations, Conquering Walls, Fearless. Who else we got over here on the TikTok side? Because the gang's all here today, y'all. Miss Shonda, I see you, girl. I'm trying to scroll back for y'all. Fearless in the building. Thank you guys so much for being here and for joining us for our new word of the week, or our word on Wednesday, where I introduce a new word into the community. She said, me. What's up? I'm Divine. Welcome in. Tania's back. Hey, girl. Hey. So listen, guys, I got a word for us this week. And as always, I'm going to put the word in the chat. We're going to explore this word. But today's word, like I said, is special because today's word was actually inspired by one of our newest members. It's actually in her name. And I was just like, that's interesting. And I had an idea of what the word meant, but I was like, let me go look it up. Let me go do my homework and make sure I'm thinking what I'm thinking. Like, let me make sure I'm thinking the right thing when it comes to this word. And then I sat with it for a minute and I was like, this word right here finna bless my friends. So yeah, the word of the day is Pellucid. Pellucid. It is Pellucid. Pellucid. Give me a second. Y'all know me. I'm going to pin it in the chat with the pronunciation for y'all. Just give me a second. What's up, Deja? Welcome in. Pellucid. Pellucid. That's right. Pellucid. I want you guys all to put it in the chat while I get the pronunciation posted for you. I should have been ready. For this part. I've only been sitting on this word for a week, you know. All right, I'm pinning it in the chat now for you with the pronunciation. So everybody say it with me. Pellucid. Pellucid. Yes, Pellucid. All right, so thank you so much for the heart me. So listen, you guys, Pellucid. This word means clear, transparent, and easy to understand. But I don't just want to give you the dictionary definition. I want this word to sit with you, right? I want us to sit with what happens when your life becomes pellucid, right? When your standards are no longer negotiable, when your boundaries don't wobble depending on who's in the room, okay? When your desires aren't whispered in secret but spoken in confidence. And most importantly, when your relationship with yourself becomes honest. Because clarity with others starts with clarity within, right? So let's just think about it. What happens when you stop pretending not to know? What's up, Coach Sherelle? Right? What happens when you stop saying, I'm just trying to figure it out, but deep down you already figured it out? See, most of the time we're not confused, right? What we are is delaying. Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. Anytime I'm here, I'm ready. So again, a lot of times we're not confused. We all running around saying, oh, I'm just confused on what to do next, where I'm supposed to go, where I'm supposed to be. But really, we're not confused. We're delaying, right? We're stalling. We're softening the truth so it doesn't disrupt comfort. We say things like, I just need more time. But time really isn't the issue. Courage is. So when you think about pellucid living, that requires courage. It requires looking at the patterns and saying, this is not a coincidence. Right, Roxy? This is consistency. It requires telling yourself this hurts, but it's honest. Welcome back, Freedom Empire. And so clarity doesn't scream. It doesn't chase. It doesn't beg. It just sits quietly and waits for you to accept it. So today we're not talking about being harsh. We're talking about being rigid, right? We're not talking about cutting everybody off. Okay? We're talking about becoming so clear within yourself that confusion no longer feels normal. Elevated Awakenings, Brooks, welcome back. So again, we're going to talk about becoming so clear within ourselves that the confusion no longer feels normal. So before we start, I want you to just take a breath with me. In through your nose. Exhale from your mouth. Again, in through your nose. And exhale. We're going to start things off with a question. Where in your life have you been pretending not to see? Where in your life have you been pretending not to see? And I wanted to start with that question because once you see yourself clearly, you start to move differently. And that shift, I honestly believe, is where the healing begins. So let's just go ahead and unpack this. I want to talk about the difference between confusion and avoidance. Again, a lot of people say I'm confused, but if we were to peel back the layers gently and honestly, most of the time we're not confused. We're uncomfortable, right? Confusion says, I don't have enough information. Avoidance says, I have the information, I just don't want to act on it yet. And that's different, right? Because see, when you're truly confused, you're seeking clarity. But when you're avoiding, you're just postponing change. And postponing change feels safer than disrupting your life. You see the inconsistency. You feel the shift in effort. You notice how your energy drops around certain people. You catch yourself shrinking. But instead of saying this doesn't align, you say, maybe I'm overthinking. And all of a sudden now confusion has become your cushion. Because why? I mean, it buys you time, right? It delays confrontation. It keeps you in this familiar discomfort instead of unfamiliar growth. And again, let's be real. Sometimes we call it confusion because clarity would require us to have a hard conversation with someone, a boundary, a decision, a release, or maybe it's personal accountability, right? And see, accountability feels heavier than confusion. If you admit that you see things clearly, then that means you have to respond clearly. Hey, brother, welcome back, Papa Smurf. If you admit that you know better, then now you got to do better. And that's the part that stretches us, right? So pellucid living means saying, I am no longer pretending this is unclear. It means acknowledging that I know how this makes me feel. Thank you for the heart me. Isladen, welcome back. Good evening to you. It means you have to say, I know what this pattern is. I know what I deserve. I know what this cost me. Avoidance feels temporary, but confusion, especially the confusion that you manufacture, that turns into years of negotiating, years of over-explaining, years of hoping that behavior will change without having boundaries. But see, clarity is simple. It's not always easy, but it's simple. Welcome back, Pamela. Elevated awakenings to you. It's just so simple. It's like the pattern is the pattern. The energy is the energy. The effort is the effort. So pellucid living doesn't dramatize. It observes, it accepts, and it just adjusts. So let me ask you gently, where are you saying I'm confused when really you're clear but afraid of the consequence for that clarity? Elevated awakenings, great new day, Lady Blue. Mars in the house. Mars, we on TV? We on TV now? Again, my question for you all. Where are you saying I'm confused when really you're clear, but you're afraid of the consequence of that clarity? And I want you guys to sit with that. Because again, the first step to clarity is admitting that you already see. Not yet? Okay. It's still time. I'm not worried. We'll make it to the TV. And I also want to talk about when the fog is familiar, right? Because sometimes confusion doesn't just happen. Sometimes we're trained for it. Y'all know what I'm talking about. If you grew up in environments where feelings weren't named clearly, where love was inconsistent, where communication was passive aggressive instead of direct, where you had to learn to read the room to survive, then clarity can feel uncomfortable to you, right? And that's because chaos was predictable. You learned how to function in uncertainty. You learned how to decode moods. You learned how to anticipate disappointment. So when someone shows up direct, consistent, and emotionally available, your nervous system might say your nervous system might not say this is healthy. It might say that this feels unfamiliar. What? Hold on, y'all. The ticky-tock. I don't know. I don't even care. FYI, there's some mess going on. Y'all know where to go. If for whatever reason the live stream on TikTok ends, I encourage you to join us on YouTube. Same username at Room2Breathe Project. But we're gonna continue. So where was I? Okay, so you learn how to anticipate the disappointment. So when somebody finally shows up in your life being direct and they're consistent, right? They're emotionally available. All of a sudden, your nervous system, doesn't recognize this as being something healthy. It feels unfamiliar. And of course, unfamiliar can feel unsafe. And I think that that's the part that we don't talk about enough, right? Some of us don't struggle with clarity because it's hard. We struggle with clarity because it's new, right? Like when you're used to guessing where you stand in a person's life, being told clearly starts to feel intense. When you're used to earning love, receiving it without performance can feel suspicious. When you're used to chasing mutual efforts, when you're used to chasing, that mutual effort can feel strange to you. But pellucid living means retraining your system, right? It means understanding that calm is not boring, that consistency is not fake, that directness is not aggression. Clarity is not confrontation, it is alignment. And alignment can feel quiet. So if you grew up where love was loud and chaotic, quiet love might feel like something's missing. But what's missing isn't passion, it's the adrenaline, right? And we have to begin to understand that adrenaline is not the same as intimacy. Pellucid relationships don't leave you guessing. They don't leave you decoding. They don't leave you performing. They are what they are, right? And if you're honest, a part of you is craving that, right? You're just not used to it yet. But deep down, you desire that. So if clarity feels uncomfortable, I don't want you to panic, right? I just need you to ask yourself, am I resisting clarity, or am I just healing from the confusion being my normal? Because sometimes the fog was familiar, and clarity is the new language that you are learning to speak. So, you're not doomed. There's still hope. And I can say that firsthand because I was a person who came from surviving the fog. And so meeting my husband and getting into this, relationship and marriage with him, I had a lot of fog to clear. I didn't know in the beginning how to let him love me in a genuine way because it seemed foreign compared to relationships of my past. And so I, started off almost self-sabotaging every single thing. And then I started realizing like, oh, this is what a healthy relationship looks like. I came into this relationship very fight or flight. If we didn't see eye to eye, I'm like, I'm gone. I'm out of here. Because I expected there to be some sort of fight, some sort of argument, something that I didn't want. But I wasn't mature enough to realize that, oh, wait, this relationship is healthy. So again, we have to be willing to understand that sometimes it's just the fog of our past that is looming over, trying to, stop us from continuing moving forward. But again, there's hope. Once you see and once you know that, okay, this is temporary, or things don't have to be this way, or that this is now healthy, now all of a sudden you know better, so you can do better. And we have to also understand that self-gaslighting, because there is such a thing. We're always talking about gaslighting, how other people gaslight other people, but there is a such thing as self-gaslighting. And self-gaslighting blocks clarity. This is a form of quiet sabotage, right? This is the part that nobody sees because it's happening internally. It's not about somebody else manipulating you. It's about you minimizing yourself. Maybe it sounds like you saying, maybe I'm too sensitive. Maybe I'm misunderstood. Maybe I'm expecting too much. Maybe I should just chill. Right? And at first that sounds so mature, right? You think you're really doing something. It sounds very self-aware. It sounds humble. But there's a thin line between self-reflection and self-erasure. See, healthy self-reflection says, let me check my part. Let me check myself before I wreck myself, right? But self-gaslighting says, let me take the blame. Blame it all on me. Say it's my fault. Y'all see the difference? When you live without clarity, You constantly renegotiate your reality. You feel disrespected, but you tell yourself it wasn't intentional. You feel neglected, but you tell yourself they're just busy. You feel unsettled, but you tell yourself that you're overthinking. But the body doesn't lie. Your chest tightens, your stomach's in knots, your sleep shifts, your energy drops. Your nervous system is screaming, this does not align. But instead of listening, you override it with logic, right? But Pellucid living requires trust. And I'm not talking about blind trust in others. I'm talking about trust in yourself. Trust that if something feels off consistently, it probably is. Trust that patterns are louder than apologies. Trust that emotional responses are signals, not inconveniences. Remember, self-gaslighting keeps you stuck because it creates fog where there was none. You start second guessing what was obvious. You start justifying what was already clear. You start diluting your standard simply to maintain access to something or someone. And here's the hard truth. Sometimes we gaslight ourselves because accepting clarity would mean that we need to change. And change means risk. Risk means loss. Loss means grief. So instead of grieving, we rationalize. Instead of adjusting, we tolerate. Instead of, honoring what we see, we pretend that the picture isn't blurry. But Pellucid living says, no more pretending. See, if I feel small consistently, that matters. If I feel unseen consistently, that matters. If I feel unsafe consistently, that matters. Clarity doesn't require proof beyond your experience. If I feel it, it matters. You are allowed to trust your lived reality. You are allowed to say, this doesn't work for me, without compiling a big PowerPoint presentation. So again, I'm going to ask you something gently. Where have you been negotiating your own clarity because you didn't want to seem dramatic? Where have you talked yourself out of what you knew? Pellucid living is a radical form of self-trust. And sometimes healing isn't about seeing more clearly. It's about finally believing what you already saw. And with that comes Pellucid boundaries, right? Clear boundaries. Because clarity without boundaries is just awareness. You can see clearly and still stay stuck. And I think this is the part that humbles us, right? You can know that somebody is inconsistent and still answer every time they call. You can know that there's a space or place that drains you and still show up out of obligation. You can know your worth and still negotiate your standards when loneliness taps you on the shoulder. Pellucid boundaries are where clarity becomes action, right? Those boundaries are not loud. They are not defensive. They are not dramatic. They are firm, right? When you're unclear, your boundaries sound like, well, maybe, or it's okay. Don't worry about it. I'll adjust. Or I don't want to make a big deal about it. But it is a big deal to you. It is a big deal. And that's enough. See, Pellucid boundaries sound like, that does not align with me, or I am not available for that. I don't have the capacity for that. I need consistency, or I've decided differently. I think that's one of my favorite ones in this season, because a lot of times we commit to things and then all of a sudden we realize that these things no longer align, or maybe they never aligned and now we just have the courage to say that this doesn't align. So I am taking comfort in saying I've decided differently. I understood that I agreed to this before, but now in this season, I'm deciding differently. At the time when I agreed to this, I thought I had the time, the energy, the desire, but the longer I've sit with it, I realize that it doesn't align and I no longer have the capacity or the desire. And it's like, you notice something? In that, there's no yelling. There's no explaining your trauma history. There's no oversharing. There's no begging to be understood. Just clarity. And here's why boundaries feel so hard sometimes. It's because clear boundaries reveal who benefited from your lack of them. So the moment that you stop over giving, somebody notices. Welcome in, Secret Psychic. Right? The moment that you stop over explaining, somebody feels it. The moment that you stop absorbing what isn't yours, the dynamic shifts. And if the relationship only worked when you were unclear, then clarity feels like conflict. But conflict is not always harm. Sometimes it's just realignment. Pellucid boundaries also require you to be honest with yourself. No fear, no doubt. Welcome in, bro. Thank you so much for the gifts. Pellucid boundaries require you to be honest with yourself. Are you clear about what you will tolerate? Or do your standards change depending upon who's asking? Do you enforce boundaries, or do you announce them and then fold? Clarity without enforcement teaches people to test you. And every single time that you override your own boundary, you teach yourself that comfort is optional. But I need for you to understand that your peace is not optional. Your safety is not optional. Your rest is not optional. Your emotional well-being is not optional. Pellucid boundaries don't punish people. They protect you. And protection is not selfish, right? It's very mature. So again, another reflection. Where have you been clear internally, but blurry externally? Where have you said, I know better, but moved like you didn't? Because clarity that is not practiced turns into resentment. And resentment is just clarity that you refuse to act on. So if you have feelings of resentment, listen. It's simply because you failed to act on the clarity that you've already had. I'll put it up again. It's actually Pellucid. Let me put the word back up on the screen for you. There you go. It's Pellucid. 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 And the word itself just means clear. Thank you. So again, pellucid living means that your words and your actions match, right? They go together. And when they do, you stop negotiating your peace for access. And that's growth. That is truly growth. I also want to talk about transparency versus overexposure. Transparency versus overexposure. Being pellucid or being clear does not mean that you are accessible to everybody. Let me say that again. Being pellucid or being clear doesn't mean that you are accessible to everybody. I am not telling y'all to be out here for the streets, right? You are not for everybody. Clarity is about truth. Access is about trust. Y'all add that to y'all's notes. Clarity is about truth. Access is about trust. And those are not the same thing. Some of us were raised to believe that in order to be honest, we have to explain everything. That in order to be mature, we have to give a full context. That in order to be understood, we have to tell the entire story, right? The whole truth and nothing but the truth, so help you God. Like, no. Pellucid living means that you are clear about your position. It doesn't mean that you owe everybody your vulnerability and an explanation. You can simply say, that doesn't work for me, without unpacking your childhood trauma. You can say, I'm choosing differently, without narrating your healing journey. You can say, I'm not available, without defending your calendar. Transparency is internal alignment. Overexposure is external pressure. Roxy says, I've been letting people access without warning that. Yeah, I mean, and it's a very easy thing to do, Roxy, because like I said, many of us grew up in that environment where we were told, oh, you have to give people access to you, or you have to explain it. So I guarantee you, you're not the only one, right? It's something that we all do. And, I think that a lot of people overexpose because they're afraid that clarity won't be respected unless it's justified. But the truth is, if somebody requires a full autobiography to honor your boundary, then they don't respect boundaries. They simply respect persuasion. And you are not persuading anybody to treat you right. Pellucid maturity understands this, that everyone doesn't need your depth. Everyone doesn't deserve your processing. Everyone doesn't get your rawness. Clarity doesn't mean that you have to bleed in public. It means that your decisions are rooted in self-trust. You don't have to prove that you're hurt. You don't have to prove that you've grown. You don't have to prove that you've changed. You can simply move differently. And again, let's be real. Some people push for explanations because they're hoping that you'll talk yourself out of your clarity. So a lot of people just come back and they want you to go deeper and dig deeper because they're really hoping that you'll get tired of standing on business. That's all it is, right? They're going to ask you why. And the only reason they're asking you why is so they can negotiate. They'll say things like, help me understand. But really, they just want to debate with you. Welcome in, KL, Elevated Awakenings. They're going to press you for details so they can poke holes in it. But Pellucid living says, I don't need to be over understood to be aligned. That's grown. You are allowed to be clear and quiet. You are allowed to be transparent and private. You are allowed to shift without announcing it. In fact, some of the most powerful growth will happen without an audience. So, where have you been over explaining your clarity because you didn't trust yourself to stand on it? Right? Where have you been confused, or where have you confused emotional access with emotional obligation? See, Pellucid living isn't loud, it's just steady. And when you are clear within yourself, you don't feel the need to overexpose to feel valid. You just move, right? You just move differently. And that movement, right? That change, that switch up that they like to talk about when they tell you that you acting brand new, that movement speaks for you. And then you will notice there is a Pellucid piece. Y'all notice how Pellucid is like the adjective that goes in front of everything else that we do, right? Secret Psychic said, the Lord brought me here for a reason. Listen, it's so fitting. That's why I've been sitting on this word for about a week, and I've been so excited to share it. I want to talk about Pellucid peace for a minute. And when we talk about peace, y'all, I'm not talking about the Instagram version, not the good vibes only version, not the aesthetic candles and soft music version. I'm talking about real peace. I dropped it right in time, period. That's what I like to hear. Yeah, let's talk about real peace. I'm talking about the kind of peace that comes from clear decisions. Because peace is not passive, right? Peace is not accidental. Peace is disciplined clarity practiced consistently. I feel like I need to add that one in the chat over here. Because y'all listen. My notes was blessing me when I was getting ready for this podcast, y'all. Peace is disciplined clarity practiced consistently. You don't stumble into peace. You choose it over and over, especially when it's costing you something. Pellucid peace begins when you get honest about what's disturbing you. Right? What drains you? What triggers you? What exhausts you? What shrinks you? And instead of managing your reaction to it, you address your exposure to it. That's maturity. A lot of us have learned how to regulate ourselves in chaos. We've mastered breathing through disrespect. We've mastered calming ourselves down after being dismissed. We've mastered not reacting when our boundaries are crossed. But Pellucid peace makes us ask different questions. Questions like, what are you, or why are you constantly regulating yourself in environments that require you to? Welcome in, Leah. I'm going to repeat the question. Why are you constantly regulating yourself in environments that require you to? See, if an environment requires you to regulate yourself, why do we keep coming back to that? Why do we keep going into places that put us in a box, that break us down, or try to dissect us as soon as we enter the room? Why should we have to constantly regulate ourselves for other people? Avita, welcome back. See, peace isn't just about coping well, it's also about choosing well. When you are pellucid about what disrupts your nervous system, you stop calling it normal. You said some have no choice. We always have a choice. We always have a choice. For some, the choice just doesn't seem clear or pellucid, right? But for others, the choice is clear, but the consequence is fearful. Like we're afraid of what will happen next. So let's say, for example, a lot of people feel like they don't have a choice when it comes to being around family members, like toxic family members and things like that. Or they think, oh, we've been friends for so long, I've got to show up for this. I got to do this. So I always use like the family reunion, right? Well, you do have a choice. So maybe as a child, maybe as a teen, maybe you don't have a choice in going places because, you know, your parents, your family force you into something, right? But we're the adult versions of those little boys and little girls now. So we have a choice. And we can choose to keep getting on to get along, right? Or we can choose to say, you know what? This doesn't align with me anymore. I don't desire this anymore. I don't have the capacity for this anymore. Because again, when you are pellucid about the things that are disrupting you, you stop calling it normal. You said the disabled. So are we talking about the physical piece? Because I think I get where you're going with that, Leah. As far as when you are maybe like when your mobility is limited and you are physically stuck in a place. And I guess I can see where you're coming from with that. But then we have to, again, there's still a mindset shift. I see where you're coming from. There still has to be some sort of mindset shift. You know, obviously we work on advocating for ourselves as best we can. And I know that can be very challenging, especially if you don't have someone else advocating for you, advocating with you. So I think that in that situation, it could be very difficult. I still want to believe that it's not impossible, but it does force us to be more creative. So yeah, I can see where the burden would sit. And I don't know, I'm going to sit with that one because I still feel like there's more to that. Yeah, I'm going to sit with that for a second. Because I want to speak to that. And I don't think that I looked at it through that perspective, if that makes sense. But don't count me out yet, Leah. I'm coming back for that. I'm gonna circle back for that. Because I mean, again, there's still in every single thing that we do, there's still a mindset shift that we can do. And so even when we are, you know, when we have a physical limitation, an environmental limitation, things like that, just like I was speaking on when we were children, we didn't necessarily always have a choice in certain things, right? So I want to circle back on that, Leah. I don't want you to feel like I'm forgetting that at all, but I want to sit with that because I do try to be very intentional about what I say. And I have to sit with that because that's not a perspective that I initially thought of in this conversation. But I got you. If nothing else, I will come back with a post today. You just challenged me, girl. I like it. I like it. See, that's why we healing in communities. Because I mean, again, you know, this situation is just a prime example of how one person is not going to see everything from everybody's eyes or everybody's perspective. And so we challenge each other. That is the part of healing in the community. Like, I'm super excited. Thank you, Leah. Leah said, no, okay, no, I got you. But, you know, as we continue, you know, talking about Pellucid, what I was saying is that when you are pellucid about the things that are disrupting your nervous system, you stop calling it normal, right? When you are pellucid about your worth, you stop accepting breadcrumbs because you're hungry. When you are pellucid about your calling, you stop entertaining spaces that don't honor it. And I think, you know, here's the part where that stretches even more, right? Peace sometimes looks like distance. It sometimes looks like silence. It sometimes looks like saying no without explanation. I know, right? Hashtag new perspectives. It looks like being misunderstood. Because when you stop participating in dysfunction will label you difficult. But peace is not performative, right? You don't choose peace so other people clap for it. You choose peace because your spirit requires it. Pellucid peace requires consistency. Just like everything else in our healing journey requires consistency. You can't choose clarity on Monday and then ignore it on Friday. You can't say, I deserve better, and then keep accepting the same patterns. Peace grows where boundaries are enforced. I want you to listen, Brooks. That peace that you are seeking grows when your boundaries are enforced. Peace grows where clarity is honored. Peace grows where you trust yourself enough to follow through. So I'm going to say this gently. Sometimes what we call anxiety is simply unaddressed clarity. So for some of us, you know you need to leave. You know you need to speak up. You know you need to shift. You know you need to rest, but you delay. And that delay creates internal tension. But Pellucid peace says, I will not ignore what I already know. It's not dramatic. It's not loud. It's not reactive. It is steady. It is calm. It is firm. It is intentional. So ask yourself, where in your life would peace increase immediately if you honor the clarity that you already have? What would change if you trusted yourself fully? Because clarity without action creates anxiety. Clarity with action creates peace. So all that tension, all of that, oh my God, what if this, what if that you are doing, that is because you have clarity. You know what to do. You know exactly what it is. You see them for exactly who they are. You know that you are spot on with what that situation is. But because you lack the action, you feel the anxiety. But if you keep the clarity and now you act on what you already see, what you already know, not after you go to, all your friends and all your family and get them to all weigh in on the situation. When you truly act on what you know, because you see it for what it is, you feel how you feel. Once you act on it, now that action creates peace. And each and every one of you deserve peace that's not temporary. You deserve peace that is rooted. That's what Pellucid peace is. Let's talk about when your behavior becomes clear, right? Let's keep this honest conversation going. I think that one of the most difficult parts of adulthood is accepting that behavior is clarity. Not words, not promises, not potential. Simple behavior. If somebody shows up late, that is clarity. If somebody is consistently dismissing your feelings, that is clarity. If someone consistently avoids accountability, that is clarity. If someone only shows up when it benefits them, that's clarity. We struggle because we want the explanation to override the evidence. We want, but they didn't mean it. We want, they're just going through a lot right now. We want but they said they'll try. And listen, compassion is beautiful. Okay? Having compassion for someone else is a beautiful thing. I'm not going to take that from you. But Compassion without boundaries becomes self-abandonment. Pellucid living means accepting patterns as information, not as personal attacks, not as a reason to spiral, not as an invitation to prove yourself, just information. When somebody shows you who they are repeatedly, that's not a puzzle for you to solve. That's a pattern for you to observe. And here's the part that hurts. Sometimes we don't accept behavior as clarity because it's attached to potential. Right? We are attached to who they could be, who they were in the beginning, who they are on their best day. But pellucid maturity doesn't evaluate someone by their best moment. It evaluates them by their consistent pattern, because consistency is clarity. So if the effort is inconsistent, the clarity is inconsistency. If the respect is conditional, then the clarity is condition. If the communication disappears when it gets uncomfortable, then the clarity is avoidance. And this is not about being cynical, right? It's about being grounded. You don't have to villainize someone to accept that their behavior doesn't align with you. Make sure y'all drinking y'all's water too now. Again, you don't have to villainize somebody to accept that their behavior doesn't align with you. You don't have to hate them. You don't have to expose them. You don't have to fight them. You don't have to argue with them. You just have to believe what you see. Because sometimes I think that we stay in confusion, not because we don't understand, but because understanding would require detachment. And detachment requires grief. And who wants to do that, right? But pellucid living says, I can care about you and still acknowledge this doesn't work. I can wish you well and still choose myself. I can see the pattern and stop pretending it's a phase. That's growth. And so again, I say this gently. When behavior becomes clear, you have a choice. You can accept it and adjust your expectations. You can address it and set your boundaries. Or you can ignore it and prepare for the repetition. But you can't call it confusing once it's consistent. So I want you to ask yourself, what behavior in your life have you been relabeling as confusion that's actually clear? What pattern have you been waiting to change without requiring change? Pellucid living doesn't argue with evidence, it just observes. Right? It accepts. It moves accordingly. And that kind of clarity protects your peace. So let's talk about becoming pellucid within yourself, right? Becoming clear from within. We'll turn the mirror inward for a moment, because I think that the deepest level of clarity isn't about other people. It's about you. It's easy to analyze behavior. It is easy for us to point out inconsistency. It's easy to say they're unclear. But are you clear? Are you pellucid about what you want? What you need? What you're avoiding? What you're tolerating? What you're afraid to admit? See, sometimes the fog isn't around you, it's within you. We constantly say that we want peace, but we're unclear about the lifestyle required to sustain it. We say that we want healthy love, but we're unclear about the standards required to attract it. We say that we want growth, but we're unclear about the habits we need to release. Pellucid self-awareness is uncomfortable because it removes excuses. When you're unclear, you can say, I'm still figuring it out. When you're pellucid, you have to say, I know what I need to do. And knowing creates responsibility. You can't unknow clarity. Once you see it, you can't unsee it. So becoming pellucid within yourself means asking hard questions gently. Right? Why am I staying? Why am I shrinking? Why am I overgiving? Why am I chasing? Why am I settling? Why am I procrastinating? Not from a place of shame, but from a place of ownership, right? Because clarity without compassion turns into self-criticism. But clarity with compassion turns into growth. Pellucid living means your words match your behavior. If you say you value rest, do you rest? If you say you value respect, do you require it? If you say you value peace, do you protect it? If you say you value yourself, do you act like it? This is the alignment piece. Your life gets clearer when your inner voice and your outer actions are in agreement. And let's be honest, sometimes we create external confusion to avoid our internal clarity. We stay busy. We stay distracted. We stay in the drama. We stay in motion. Because stillness will force us to hear ourselves. But pellucid self-awareness requires stillness. It requires sitting long enough to admit that this no longer fits me, that I've outgrown this, that, I'm afraid of what's next. I'm scared to start over, or maybe I'm ready. There is power in that kind of honesty. Say which part again, Melody? I think I caught your comment a little late, so I don't know which part you're talking about. But again, guys, there is power in that kind of honesty. Not performative honesty, not social media honesty, but private honesty. I think you were talking about when I asked the questions of if you value rest, do you rest? Maybe. I don't know. My bad, y'all. You can always catch the replay. You can go back and rewind it. It'll come to you. Just let me know if it circles back and I got you. But again, pellucid self-awareness requires stillness. And there is power in that kind of honesty. It's private honesty, right? The kind that changes how you move even when nobody else knows why. When you become pellucid within yourself, you stop chasing validation. You stop negotiating your worth. You stop pretending not to see. You just move slower. You choose wiser. You speak less. You enforce more. And your peace increases. it multiplies, right? Because clarity simplifies your life. You don't have to overthink what's aligned. You don't have to decode what's clear. You don't have to force what flows. So if you were radically honest with yourself today, what would you admit? And you don't have to put this in the chat. This is something for you to answer. This is a prompt for your journal. Anytime I ask these reflection questions, I do not want you to feel pressured into answering during this live stream. I would rather encourage you to sit with it so you can be honest with it. So again, my question, if you were radically honest with yourself today, what would you admit? What truth have you been circling? What clarity have you been postponing? Thank you for the follow, T-Dog. What decision have you already made in your spirit but haven't acted on yet? Pellucid living isn't about perfection. It's about alignment. It's about no longer betraying your own awareness. Because what you become clear within yourself, or when you become clear within yourself, your entire life begins to reorganize around that clarity. Elevated Awakenings Butterfly, welcome in. Remember, fear is just false evidence appearing real. Remember that all the things that they say are impossible can't simply be impossible because the word itself says I'm possible. But in order to have a different outcome, you have to input something different. You have to do something different. So let's circle back. The word today was pellucid. 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 Welcome back, Tamika. Pellucid. It means clear, transparent, easy to understand. Thank you so much for the heart, me. But clarity is only powerful when you're willing to honor it. You can listen to this whole episode. You can nod your head. You can even agree with every point that I've made. But if you leave and go back to pretending that you don't see what you see, then the fog wins again. So here's what I challenge you to do. Before you move on to your next task today, before you scroll, before you distract yourself, ask yourself one honest question. Where in my life is the picture already clear, but I keep adjusting the focus so I don't have to act? Where in your life is the picture already clear, but I keep adjusting my focus so I don't have to act? Is it a relationship, a habit, a boundary, a calling, a decision, a conversation that you've been postponing? Remember, clarity is not the enemy. Clarity is your compass. It's not showing up to embarrass you. It shows up to protect you. And yeah, sometimes clarity costs you. It might cost you comfort. It might cost you convenience. It might cost you proximity. It might even cost you a version of yourself that you've outgrown. But confusion costs more. Confusion costs peace. Costs time. It costs self-trust. Confusion costs years. And don't you think that you've already paid enough? Pellucid living is a decision. It's a decision to stop gaslighting yourself. Stop negotiating what you already know. A decision to let behavior be information. A decision to move in alignment with your awareness. It's not about becoming cold. It's not about cutting everyone off. It's not about being rigid. It's about being honest. Honest enough to say, this no longer aligns. Honest enough to say, I deserve better. Honest enough to say, I'm scared, but I'm still choosing clarity. That's strength. So here's your affirmation today. I trust what I see. I trust what I feel. I trust what I know. I move with clarity and protect my peace. I trust what I see. I trust what I feel. I trust what I know. I move with clarity and protect my peace. I trust what I see. I trust what I feel. I trust what I know. I move with clarity and protect my peace. Now, if this word Pellucid hit home for you today, I want you to drop a green heart in the chat. You know, that's what our way of saying, I'm choosing clarity. I'm choosing honesty. And today it also means I'm choosing Pellucid living. And remember, if you are in need of a space where clarity is supported, not shamed, where boundaries are honored, not questioned, where healing is intentional, not performative, I invite you to join our Room2Breathe community powered by school. You can check out the link in my bio or visit my website directly at selfcareclub.org. And as we get ready to close out, I want to leave you all with a little love and light. Natania said, Pellucid got me over here tearing up. Listen, healing be like that sometimes, sis. And, you know, there's always a follow-up. What I'm trying to do is in the school community, you guys, what my plan is after the podcast, I want to take those reflections for your journal prompts. I'm going to take the affirmations and post those in there as well. So for those of you who are looking for more, who are looking to broaden this, when you come over to the school community, once the podcast ends, there is additional support for you. There is a whole community. And when I say that we are helping each other, when I say that we are healing out loud, honey, I am loving it. So again, if you are seeking additional support, if you want this conversation beyond this conversation, then join us in the Room2Breathe community powered by school. Like I said, it is a free community. There are a ton of resources there. We are 40 strong right now. I mean, in 2 weeks, 40 people, like that's top tier right there. That's not even all the other people from the prior community coming over yet. If they were to come over, we would be like 100 strong. So I'm just saying, join us in school, where the lessons, you know, life's lessons keep teaching us and keep pouring into us. But yeah, let me leave you all with a little love and light today. As always, I encourage you to keep breathing, welcoming ghosts through the highs, the lows, and every moment in between. I want each and every one of you to keep choosing peace, even if it feels out of reach. And know that here at the Self-Care Club, you will always be seen, always valued, and always supported. So don't be afraid to take up space, speak your truth, and make a little room for you to breathe. I love each and every one of you to life. And I am praying that your day is not just amazing, but aligned, intentional, And yes, on purpose, filled with purpose. This has been another Room to Breathe podcast, and I look forward to connecting with you all again soon. Thank you.